Let me log into Salesforce org. And also other programming languages uses this MVC architecture. So it's a model view controller architecture. So our Salesforce coding follows the same architecture. So we call an MVC architecture. As a part of the MVC architecture, so there are three layers we use. So one is a model. So model is one layer. So model is more into Salesforce database. So we call Salesforce objects, which is a combination of either standard or custom objects. So we call a model. So we store the customer data in this database system. So anyway, we have a built-in database. So we know database as a service for the Salesforce, and we store our customer data using a model layer. So it's a simply a model we call model. So which is a force.com database server. And so V stands for view. So we call Visual Force pages. So Visual Force pages are nothing but the user interfaces to the end user. So we built the Visual Force pages using a programming language called Visual Force programming language, which is more into UI design. So here you can see a smaller web application. So where I have the title and the different columns and the save button. So this is just an example to UI, user interface. So to build such a user interfaces in Salesforce, we use a Visual Force programming language, which comes under View. So V, and C is nothing but we call a controller. So they are the classes. So for this we use an Apex programming language. So this is a one separate programming language, and this is another programming language. So these two programming languages are synced together. So which means we parallelly write these two programming languages in order to pass the parameter from web page to controller and controller to web pages. So we call Visual Force pages. So here web pages are called as a Visual Force pages, and such Visual Force pages we build using Visual Force programming language. And whereas in C stands for a controller, so which is an Apex programming language. So Apex is one of the native programming language to the Salesforce Force.com platform, and where you can write your business logic, that is a backend logic. The logic can be in the form of classes. So it can be in the form of classes, or it can be the triggers, or it can be the web services. So it can be in the different formats. So the programming language we use is Apex programming language, so which is more into a Java programming language. So if anybody knows any programming language, like any object oriented programming language, so for them it would be easier to learn. So even our training covers from the scratch onwards, so that even if you don't know any additional technical background, so coding knowledge, you can easily learn this technology. It is not a big complex one when compared with Java and .NET. It is a smaller area, so I can say it's part of the core Java. But the syntaxes are closer to Java, so that's why most of the conversion rate in the market, the people are learning Salesforce from Java to our platform. So here you can see the communication lines. So here the communication lines are nothing but data transformations. Generally, in rare cases, we have the communication from model to Visual Force pages as well. So they are the very rare cases, but most of the time, so here is the communication transformations. Like, so let's say I am here, so I'm working on this web application. I just enter the data, and when I click on save button, so there should be an action that must be executed in the backend to receive all these parameters. Because so when I click on save button, so there should be an action, so which is to validate the data as well as to send the data to our model. So model is our object. Let's say customer registration. So let's say here is a bank account information, so related to one customer. So I fill the form, and when I click on save button, so the data that I enter must goes to any of the object, so that we use in Salesforce. So in that case, so there should be a controller. So controllers, the name itself indicates controller. Controller, it controls the business logic. So it is a intermediator between our model and Visual Force pages. So what this controller can do is, it is capable to communicate with our database and it is capable to communicate with our Visualforce pages. It is a mediator. It can receive the data from the Visualforce pages and it can pass us to object. Let's say I enter the data one direction. So let's consider this direction. So from V to controller, controller to model. So generally any user enters the data on the Visualforce pages, that is in web applications. Once user enters the data, the parameters will be received by the controller. So because this controller and Visualforce page has some relationship, so we establish the relationship, and the parameter that we pass will be received in the controller level, and from controller to it goes to the object. So this is the one direction. So in another direction, reverse direction, so let's say I have already data in my database. And I would like to query the data from Salesforce object and would like to display on my Visualforce page. So this is the input form. Just this is an input form as of now. So assume that this is just a displayed form. So we can query the data from Salesforce object, so from the controller, and we can return the data to Visualforce. So there are two directions. So either a controller is capable to pass the data from page to database, or a database to Visualforce. The business logic will be written in the Apex programming language. So that is an MVC architecture. So we use an MVC architecture in Salesforce to write our code. So to customizing the applications using Visualforce and the Apex programming language. So what are the editions we use here? So we have the different editions available in Salesforce, but all the editions are not supporting this customizations. So we cannot write the code using contact manager, group and professional edition. So these are just for administration. So these three editions are just for configuring the applications. To customize your application, so either use the developer edition or enterprise edition or unlimited editions. So anyways, we have the developer editions. We can continue the development part using this developer edition, so we don't need to purchase any additional license for it. But in case, so when you are working for a customer, so any client, so client purchase a Salesforce license, and he will give you one Salesforce login credentials. So daily, based on your user stories, you can continue working on it and you can follow up on it. So this is our developer editions we are using for development as well as integrations too. So what are the roles and responsibilities in a daily project? Let's say you got a job as a developer. So what will be your role and responsibilities? So if you continue your work as a developer, so you should have knowledge in administration, because a developer always has to work as an administrator some activities too. So because there is no separate administrator roles in Salesforce, that's why developer must have knowledge in administration, because while building an application, so if you don't have a knowledge on administration, maybe you don't know the better solution. So when you have the knowledge in administration, then only you can find the better solution, whether the solution is possible through an administration or not. So if the solution is not possible through an administration, then we build the application using coding, but the priority goes to administration. So because administration is a point and click, so when it is done by the point and click, you should not go for the coding. So we just have a priority on the administration. If it is not possible through administration as per the customer requirement, then think about Visualforce and Apex solution. So as a developer, so you should have knowledge on administration. So even if you have the basic knowledge in administration, you can go through this module. So it's not it doesn't have more dependency with our admin structure. So generally developers must have a knowledge on agile methodology, so which is a one methodology where we get the daily requirements. So agile is more into a dynamic methodology. So you don't get all the requirements at once, like it will be like based on your daily discussions you get the requirements, and you need to alternate your applications accordingly. So anyway, so daily you need to talk to the customer to gather the requirements and providing the time estimations. So once the customer is okay for your estimations, probably you can start working on it. And so as a part of the project implementation, the activities can be data model. So data model design. So sometimes you have to create your objects which are required for application. So it's which is more so the initial requirements. So once the project is signed off, what are the things that are required? So more into the admin activities. So if you have a knowledge in administration, probably you can work yourself. Like you can create your objects, you can configure the application. And as a developer, so what are the solution you provide? So that needs to be verified by the higher people. Or so if you know this is the best solution, you can probably start working on it. And you should have knowledge on ETL tools, data loading tools. So sometimes to test your application that you build, you may require the bulk data. So if you know how to load the data using data loader tools, probably you can test your data yourself. And you should have knowledge on roles, profiles, and user configurations. So sometimes you need to test your application with multiple users. So because based on the permissions you define, so application behaves differently to different users. So to identify that, you need some knowledge on user configuration too, and reports, dashboards if needed. So up to the 10th point, so all are admin activities, more into the admin activities. So few are combined to developer as well. But from 11th action, so developing an application using Visual Force programming and Apex programming language. So let's say you got a requirement in one of the project, and you have you have a good knowledge in both administration as well as in coding, so that you can identify which one is a better solution. So in case if the requirement is possible through administration, probably it's a point and click. It doesn't take more time, so it's easier for everyone. So even you can directly configure the same in the production organization. Even a deployment is not required in that case. So, but if the requirement is not possible through an administration, so what is an alternative? So it can be either a Visual Force programming layer or an Apex programming layer. So these are the two layers. A database is a common part. So view and backend logic. So you should have to define either a user interface for the customers, or you have to write a business logic to fulfill the requirements. And also, so what are the other technologies that you use while building the user interfaces? So if you go to the 12th step, so building the better UI using HTML and CSS. So addition to Visual Force programming language, so some areas you need to work with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So you need at least some basic idea on these three areas, because only the pure Visual Force solution sometimes require some additional programming help. So let's say, so if you just wanted to uh, add some colors for your user interface. So for example, in our MVC, so I have a save button here. So let's see, here is a save button. I would like to move the save button at the middle of the screen. So that is part of the CSS. So CSS, using the CSS, you can decide the placement of the components that you are displaying on the user interface. And sometimes if any limitations you find in the Visual Force programming language, probably you can also work with HTML in the same Visual Force pages while building web applications. So our Salesforce supports HTML code, CSS code, JavaScript code. It supports all the scripting languages, most of the scripting languages which are used to build the web applications. So some it's a better you should have knowledge on HTML, CSS, and JavaScript also. So in the first section of our technical side, so we will talk about the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript as well. So you should have, so it's a part of the technical side. So 13th point, test code coverage. So test code coverage is one area, so which is important. So in the deployments, before deploying the changes, so you should take care about the test code coverage. So we will talk about later on this. So anyways, once you are done with your work, you need to update on the status. So some projects have the daily status calls and some projects have the weekly status calls, and based on it you need to update your status to customers. That is a common activity to anyone, even for analyst, QA analyst or business analyst, solution architect. So everyone has to talk to customer on a status calls. And 15th one is preparing the project related documents. So in case if project requires some documents, so you need to prepare the solution document for it. And once you done some implementation, so probably it's a better way to take the code backup for future reference, or in case if there is any problem you can take the backup with your code. So once you done the story or once you done any work, so probably, so in case sometimes the customer asks you the demo, so you should be ready for the demo as well. So what are all the things you have done so far in the project? We have to give a smaller demo so that so customer know how the progress is, and in case if there is any changes are required, probably he can suggest you. So that is a project activity. And so once the project is done, probably you have to train to end user sometimes. So generally the business people taking care this training part, but in case if it is required, so it's more into technical and more into customization. So in that area you need to help to the end users. So finally, so once you're done, so there is a deployment phase. So in the deployment phase, so we move the application from one environment to another environment. We call sandbox and production. So based on the sprint releases, they based on the sprint number of sprints and based on the releases, so we will deploy the components from one environment to another environment. So and the 20th one is checklist preparation on all manifest items deployed. So checklist preparation is nothing but what are all the manifest items. So manifest items are nothing but what are all the components you created and what are all the classes you modified and what are all the additional changes you did. You need to capture everything. So before the deployment, if you miss any component while deploying, so you'll get some errors because of the component is not available in the moving chain set. So it should be so while working, so you should be note everything so that you worked on, so that it will be easier for you um, to deploy the things. So working on pre and post deployment activities. Sometimes before deployment you need to work on some activities, and after deployment you need to do some manual changes even in the production organization. So these are all the overall role and responsibility for a developer in a project. So most of the once you have the technical knowledge in Visual Force and Apex, probably rest of the things are common to everyone. So only the technical knowledge will be the matter. So once you're done, so rest of the things will be done automatically. So these are the role and responsibilities. And just to show you, so here is the Visual Force developer guide, and here is the Apex developer guide. So here is the just for logos. So let's talk about, so before that, so let me know if you have any questions.
Nara, I have a question.
Yes, yes, Manish.
You told us that if we need to customize an application, so we use Visual Force and that Apex language. So can you give us an business scenario where we can achieve uh, where we cannot achieve the functionality through the admin, but we can achieve the same functionality through Visual Force or Apex?
Yeah, the question is, yeah, so let me show you, let me tell you an example here. So what is an example that we should go for the customization? So for example, so if you go to the standard screens, let's say employee screen. So when I click on new button, Just click on new button. Okay, anyway, so just click on continue. So here is a screen where you can enter the data. So this is the actual standard interface. So we can enter the data, and when I click on save button, the record will be created in the database. So this is just a point and click. It doesn't require any coding. So that we know already. So we have created records and we have created all the fields. It's a point and click. So let's say my requirement is customer is asking us, I don't want to see this logo. So instead of this logo, I would like to I would like to see my company logo. So this is a standard screen. So we cannot change the logos. So I mean, we can change the tab, but addition to the logo, in case if the customer is looking for some help description to the end user while creating the customer record. Right, let's say I would like to add some description, 10 lines of statement here. Then after that, I would like to show some sections. So this is more into customization. So if the customer is not happy with the standard screens, so probably so we have to create our own user interfaces that matches to customer requirement. So once you done the own user interfaces, the customizable interfaces, so you can link your interface to the new button. So when you click on new button, instead of navigating to the standard screens, you can navigate to your Visual Force page, so that the page will be the different. So the user interface will be the different. That is a one limitation, right? So like that, in case if the customer is looking such a customization, so we work on different customizations in the coding area. So this is a one smaller example I can say. Manish, did I answer to you? Manish, right?
Uh, yes. So another question.
Yeah.
Once we do a customization, so we will use this as we will use this page as a reference to make a customization, or we will create a brand new page in HTML and Apex or Visual Force, and then integrate with the objects.
Yeah, we have to create a new Visual Force page. It is a new page, new Visual Force page, and it has some backend logic too. So like save button. So when you click on save, it has to create a record in employee table. So the save action must be an Apex code. So the user interface, like adding this colors section and adding the logos.
But
Yeah.
my question is, we have already have a page over here. So do we export this page into an HTML or Visual Force or Apex standards,
No,
or
no,
do we create a
no.
brand new
We
all these
don't. Yeah, we don't need anything. We don't export the standard pages. So we don't export the standard pages in a HTML or any other source code. So we have to write our own Visual Force page code. So for that we have the Visual Force programming language. So there we have the different Visual Force elements, and using the Visual Force programming areas, so we can create the new Visual Force page. So we just override. So just to override the standard page with our custom page. So in case if you don't want
so
your custom page, you can remove it. So you can get your own standard page. We don't do any changes in the standard page level. We just override the button. So when you click on new button, instead of navigating to a standard page, we just navigate to our custom page.
so when we use this programming language, so in that case, then we don't even need this, right?
Yeah, sometimes. So if
We
if the
if,
customer is
in if we have created a page in Visual Force, then we can just directly connect that Visual Force page to this Salesforce objects, and we don't have to even see this page, right?
exactly. So any other questions? Anyone have any questions? Okay, then fine. So, so we are good with MVC architecture. So we directly work with the developer editions like what we did in the administration. Similar to that, we directly work with a developer edition. So to write our code. So once you complete the course, so you are capable. So for all the role and responsibilities, you can directly manage your projects. So let's say, so what are the certifications? So there are two certifications, especially in the developer side. So one is the developer platform one, so which is a one Salesforce certification, and another one is developer platform two. So these are the two certifications. So developer platform one is a basic developer certification. So once you complete the course, so probably you can directly take the developer platform one. But for developer platform two, so you need some preparation. So you need some additional preparation. So it's better to have some real-time project experience. So you need some additional work for developer platform 2. It's more into three rounds of test. Developer platform 2 has one multi-choice and another one is an assignment and another one is an online test. So for developer platform 1, it's a multi-choice test, multi-choice, and so better, easier when compared with developer platform 2. But it has, so developer platform 2 has multi-choice test plus assignment, a programming assignment plus an online just question and answer test. So these are the certification. So once you complete the course, you are capable to finish the first one, but for the second one, so you just need some additional preparation for it. So these are the two certifications. Let's move to the course content. So what is the content that we cover?
I have a question.
Yeah.
You said that after this course, we will be able to uh, complete this platform, developer platform one certifications. Do you think how long it's going to take to complete the platform developer two
So it's
so
better
that we
to
can,
have, yeah, it's better to have some understanding in the requirement because so when it is in developer platform 2, so sales you can clear the first test. So I mean you can clear the multi-choice test. So for the assignment, you should have some knowledge, like you should have some real-time knowledge. So at least you should have one or two implementation knowledge in Salesforce. So because Salesforce directly gives you one assignment, you should have some knowledge. So you should understand the requirements. To understand the requirements, so at least you should have some knowledge, at least one or two implementation done in the real time. So that's a better. So in case if you want to take, you can take this assignment too as well. But so once you complete the course, it will be not easy. Even the guys who has worked for 2 or 3 years in the Salesforce implementations, it will be difficult to them even. So you should have much knowledge in uh, the coding side, so that you can complete your assignment. And Salesforce gives us 1 month time to complete and submit the assignment, and they will review the code. If they feel the code is well written and follows all the best practices, then definitely so you get the results, good results. So better to wait for some time till you have expertise in coding, right? So it depends on your how long you take to complete assignment. So if you have very good knowledge, so probably the assignments will not take more than 10 days. So smaller assignment they give us, but they look for all the best practices. So we will cover all the best practices in the Salesforce training. So that really helps you. So any questions? Okay, so here is a course content. So this is a overall course content that we cover in the daily classes. So overall duration can be the 25, so minimum 25 hours and maximum can be 30 hours for the total developer classes. So 30 hours means you can assume if you have 1 hour session daily, so it takes another 25 days. So for if you have the regular classes, if you have 1.5 hour session, probably it takes another 3 weeks time. So if you have 1.5 hour session daily, it takes 3 weeks of time. So as a part of the training, so it has a more demand in the market. So developer has a more demand in the market, and the job is a challenging job, and it has more competition as well. So here is course content. So first session. In the first session, we talk about not the session. So assume that the first section one. In section one, so maybe some sections takes 1 or 2 classes, some sections it takes 3 classes. So it depends on how many hours we spend in the regular hours in a daily classes. So assume that in the first section, so we cover the CSS part, so cascading style sheet, so how to apply the colors to the user interfaces and all, and we talk about the CSS best practices and HTML programming language, and what are the different editors to write our code. So this is complete the first one, and in the second section goes to a JavaScript and Apex programming language. So it is a section. Some sections takes 2-3 classes also. I'm talking about the section wise. So JavaScript and Apex programming, which is a part of the second section, and the third section is more into data types. So while writing the program, so what are the different data types we use? And then the MVC starts from the fourth section. So from the fourth section, MVC, Model View Controller Programming starts here. So here is the controller part, and model will be the backend our database, and it also includes the views. So it starts from MVC starts from fourth section. The first section goes to the complete basics with Visual Force programming and basics with HTML and basics with CSS, and the second section goes to the basics with JavaScript and Apex programming introduction. And from fourth section, so we directly work with combined application. So combining and building an application using Visual Force, Apex, and our force.com database. And as a part of the development, so we use the developer console. So developer consoles are more into debugging our results, executing a snippet of the code. So just if you want to execute some piece of code, so which is just a temporary, so you can directly use the developer console. So I will show you later, just I'm giving an introduction, so overview of all the concepts. About these are the more into links. When you have the link on a page, so when you click on link, so if you want to perform some operations, so if you want to perform the ML operation or any navigation, that covers here sixth section. And this is the seventh section, so it's more important section here. Seventh section is about wrapper classes and view state and inner and relational queries. So when you have the multiple objects having the relationship each other, how can you query the data? So that is the seventh section. So and triggers. So triggers is also one of the important area that a developer must work. So backend operations. So when you create a record, so if you wanted to execute some logic in the backend, so that can be with the triggers like this. So components is also another area, so for the reusability, so which is in ninth section. So and we work with exception handling as well. So exception handling is one of the area, so which is required for each application. So exceptions are the runtime errors. So suppose when you click on a button, if you find any errors, how can you control the error? So that is a part of the exception handling. So another important area is Ajax components. So Ajax components are for partial rendering the pages and blocks. So we will work on Ajax components, a big session. It's a more important session while building the user interfaces. And 11th section goes to packages and app exchange products. So we left this part in the administration. So the part will be covered here in the developer session. So how to build. So if you have your own application, how can you market your application by creating the packages? So while creating the packages, you have to take care about the test classes and all the things. And so Forge.com site. So it's more into public website building. So let's say you would like to build your company website. Salesforce supports for it. A public website is a website. It doesn't require any authentication. Anyone can access the application. So such Forge.com sites you can build. And if you want to, so this is more into the SOCL and SOCL. If you want to retrieve the data, what is the commands you have to write? If you want to search the data, what are the commands? That will be the 13th section. And batch and scheduling, like more into the handling bulk data and scheduling the jobs. Let's say you have thousands and millions of records and you would like to execute. So there are some limitation in Salesforce. Based on the limitations only we can perform the DML operation. In case sometimes we have to, even if you want to overcome the limitation, there is a concept called batch apex. It is used for multi uh, bulk data handling. So when you are working with a huge amount of data on Salesforce database, so batch apex help us. And scheduling apex is more into scheduling the jobs. Let's say you would like to execute a class daily at 10 a.m. So that needs to be schedulable. So based on daily, so it will update the results. And the 15th section is more into deployment. So once you are done with the implementation, how can you move the elements from one sandbox to production? So that is more into Forge.com IDE. So we call a Forge.com IDE Eclipse. There are different ways. There are different deployment methods we use here. So we use the change sets, and we use the Forge.com IDE, and we use the packages. So we cover all the deployment activities. So this is more into development. So we need at least 25 minimum hours to complete the course. And after that, so once we're done with the development, so we start the integration, so which is 5 hours of training. Approximately it takes 1 week classes, 1 week training. So once we complete the development, I will give you an overview of the integration, like how I did today for the developer, so that I can share you much information on the integrations. As of now, here is the course content you can see. It's a 1 week training. So we are just left with the 30 hours of training. So from today,